just go ahead and tell us more about yourself, your background, and how you got into photography.
Yeah, great. First off, I want to say thank you guys for inviting me on. I'm honestly honored to be invited onto a podcast about photography. And a little bit more about myself. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio area. I got into photography about 6, 7 years ago and started taking it more serious about, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. I'm pretty much self-taught or YouTube University taught. Um, and I mean, I shoot landscapes, and I, do mostly like travel and landscape photography, and I just, yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. So what kind of got you to pick up that camera in the first place there?
I wish it was like this great philosophical journey, but I think like a lot of photographers out there, we kind of, start with the love of the outdoors and love of, and I love to take, photos of the hikes that I would go on and cool things I would see along the way. And eventually I decided the camera phone wasn't cutting it.
Hmm.
Picked up, I think my first like digital camera was a Sony Nex 5 or Nex 7. Um, had a couple lenses for that. I think I had like a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200, kit lenses basically for that. And started taking more serious photos, but not like artistic photos in any way, more documenting my travels with a better camera essentially. And then kind of progressed from there. So basically just came out of a love for being outside and hiking.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great way to get started there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it pretty jarring of an experience to like transition from doing you said with the phone to like a DSLR?
Absolutely. I think when I first got my Sony Nex 5, I had it on the intelligent auto setting and kind of like had still crappy photos that were basically like phone photos.
Hmm.
But then as I kind of, got more and more into the taking of photos and whatnot, I, discovered how to expose a photo and started to learn the manual settings and everything. And that's always a learning curve for any photographer.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny how it's come full circle too, because now like modern smartphones have those like the pro mode features, and you can adjust, the exposure, ISO, and so on. It's pretty neat
I
how it's
know
all just come around.
it's kind of crazy how far they've come. It, I fear that I've spent all this money on my photography gear and I could have just kept upgrading my phone and been a photographer that way.
True, true. I have those
That's
same
very true.
fears. Yeah. I'm curious, how many years ago was this when you really got into it?
um, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, I started taking it pretty serious. I started taking more serious trips geared towards just the photography
Hmm.
instead of just the love of travel. Um, and started like really diving deep into exposure triangle and editing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. Is there any reason maybe that you're drawn more to like landscape photography in particular?
For me, I think it's a love of natural landscapes, a love of the way the light plays on landscapes. I've always found myself connected more to wide open vistas and woodlands and seascapes than any other type of photography. I've tried different types of photography. I think when you're first learning, you're excited to just go out and shoot anything with your camera. So I've done portraits and I've done some wildlife stuff, but for some reason, I think the love of camping and the love of hiking has you more so out in the landscape and out in the nature, of wherever you're at. And so I think that's why I connect more with that style of photography.
Yeah, and I've also noticed with that too, you kind of seem to be more drawn to kind of the more magnificent and grand scale kind of images. Is there a certain reason why you're drawn to that?
That's a good question. So I think the big reason for me is I love feeling insignificant in places. I think it's a very humbling experience to be in a place where you realize the scale and magnitude of nature and life and the universe as a whole. So things like grand landscapes where you have mountains and rivers and things like that all interconnected um, really just gives you a sense of your place in the world and how small you are compared to the world itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've definitely felt that before with, just walking through an old growth woodland, and you just feel, like you said, just feel very, very small in like the grand scheme of things. So I could definitely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.